Martell Holt isn't caught up in drama, business talk, or public arguments. This moment is different. It's about self-reflection. It's about Martell getting honest, not with others, but with himself. What unfolded during that therapy session might just change how people see him entirely. Sitting quietly across from his therapist, Martell looked different, calmer, heavier in thought. This wasn't the confident man from Love and Marriage Huntsville who's always defending his point or trying to stay in control. This was a man facing his own truth, ready to deal with what he's been avoiding for years. When the therapist asked what had been weighing on him lately, Martell admitted something he's rarely said out loud. He's struggling to let go, letting go of people, habits, and situations that no longer serve him. He said he's always considered himself mentally strong, someone who can walk away from anything without hesitation. But deep down, he knows that mental strength isn't the same as emotional healing. That's been his real challenge. He confessed that even when he recognizes certain things as unhealthy, he still finds himself holding on to relationships, to images, to patterns he knows he's outgrown. He's realizing that peace requires release. When the therapist asked why letting go feels so hard, Martell paused before saying something real. He said that sometimes God shows him exactly who people are, their true intentions, their energy, yet he ignores the signs. He called them red flags and admitted that instead of cutting ties, he stays hoping things will change. He said he knows that choice only brings him pain, but he hasn't figured out how to break the cycle. It was clear that this conversation wasn't just about other people. It was about Martell's relationship with himself, his emotions, his patterns, his fears. The therapist told him that each time he keeps something in his life that's meant to end, he ends up damaging himself in the process. Martell nodded quietly. He said he always feels it when it's time to move on, but he hesitates to close the door completely. That's something a lot of people can relate to, holding on to what's familiar, even when it's no longer healthy. The therapist suggested that his attachment to control might be part of the reason. Martell agreed. He said for most of his life, control has been his safety net, in relationships, in business, and even in fatherhood. But lately, he's learning that control doesn't equal peace. Then the therapist said something that stuck with him. Sometimes the things we refuse to let go of are the very things blocking our growth. Martell leaned back, deep in thought. He said he knows it's true. Holding on has cost him peace, happiness, and even progress. Then the therapist touched on something deeper, distraction. He said Martell tends to distract himself instead of dealing with pain. Martell looked down and admitted that he stays busy when things get hard, pouring his energy into work, relationships, or his kids. He said it's easier to stay occupied than to sit still and feel. The therapist didn't criticize him, just gently said that sometimes distractions keep us from healing. That realization hit hard. Martell took a deep breath and said, I just want to get better at letting go of what doesn't serve me. He admitted that's been his hardest lesson, not business or fame, but knowing when to walk away. He smiled softly and said he's aware of his weaknesses. He just hasn't conquered them yet. That's when the therapist quoted, "Without vision, people perish." The words hung in the air. Martell looked up, as if he was hearing them for the first time. The therapist explained that without clear direction, without knowing the man he truly wants to be, he'll keep repeating old cycles. Martell said that hit him deeply. For the first time, he realized that even strength means nothing without purpose. From there, the conversation turned spiritual. Martell said he knows he needs to reconnect with God, not through quick routine prayers, but through real, intentional faith. He admitted he hasn't been spiritually consistent in a long time. The therapist encouraged him to rebuild that connection because true healing starts in stillness, in moments of quiet reflection. You could see something shift in Martell's face. It was like he finally understood that the peace he's been chasing might have been there all along. He just never made room for it. In that moment, he wasn't the reality TV personality or the businessman. He was simply a man ready to stop running. That kind of growth isn't loud or dramatic. It's quiet. It happens in the stillness, when someone decides they're tired of repeating the same mistakes. Martell's honesty in that room showed that he's finally trying to become better, not for anyone else, but for himself. As the session continued, the walls came down even more. Martell started opening up about how his life has changed, how fame, business, and relationships have shaped him into someone he doesn't always recognize. He said that sometimes he feels lost, like he's been on autopilot, doing what's expected rather than what feels right. It was one of the most honest moments fans have ever seen from him. When the therapist asked what he's truly searching for, Martell sat in silence for a few seconds before saying softly, "Peace. I just want peace." That moment hit hard. For a man who's lived in chaos for years, peace feels like a rare blessing. Fans have seen him argue, defend himself, and lash out, but this was different. He was calm, introspective, and ready to change. He spoke about how his relationship with Melody changed him. He said that while there was love once, their breakup broke something inside him. Not just his marriage, but his sense of self. He admitted his mistakes, that pride and ego got in the way, and said he used to think being a man meant being in control. But now he understands that real strength comes from humility, from owning your flaws and growing through them. The therapist told him that healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means forgiving yourself and learning from the past. Martell admitted that he still feels judged, that people only see his mistakes and not his growth. He said it's hard trying to evolve under a microscope, but he's learning not to let that define him. When the therapist mentioned Melody again, Martell took a deep breath and said he respects her. He acknowledged that she's a major part of his journey, both the good and the painful parts. He said co-parenting hasn't been easy, but he's working to keep things peaceful for their kids. He admitted that emotions still flare up sometimes, but he's learning not to react from a place of hurt. That kind of awareness shows growth, even if it's still a work in progress. He also spoke about his relationships with the rest of the Love and Marriage Huntsville cast: Marcel, Letitia, Maurice, Kimmy, Tiffany, and Louis. He said that being in that circle isn't always easy because everyone has an opinion and people don't always see the full picture. He said he often feels misunderstood, but is learning not to seek validation from others anymore. The therapist told him that healing means learning to affirm himself, and Martell said that's something he's finally working on. Then came a moment of real honesty. Martell talked about his dynamic with Marcel and admitted that some of their tension comes from comparison. He said he used to measure his life against others, business success, family life, everything, and that mindset only bred jealousy and competition. Now he's realizing that peace comes from staying in your own lane. He said comparison is the thief of joy, and that truth felt freeing. When asked what he wants most moving forward, Martell didn't talk about fame or money. He said he just wants to be a better man, a better father, a better example. He said he wants his sons to know that being strong doesn't mean being controlling, and he wants his daughters to know that even men who make mistakes can still grow and change. That part of the conversation was emotional, because despite his flaws, his love for his children remains constant. Then the therapist said something that hit deep. "You keep saying you're strong, Martell, but strength without purpose becomes pride. What are you using your strength for?" Martell went quiet, before saying to survive. That's when it hit him. Surviving isn't the same as living. He realized he's been in survival mode for years, constantly fighting battles that left him drained. Now he wants to start living peacefully, intentionally, and with faith. He brought up prayer again, saying he wants to rebuild that daily habit, not just when things are falling apart, but when they're calm too. He said his faith has been tested many times, but he knows the only way forward is through God. The therapist told him to start small, a few minutes of gratitude every day. Martell smiled and said he's ready. By the end of the session, there was silence, the kind that speaks louder than words. Martell didn't leave with all the answers, but he left with awareness. He wasn't pointing fingers or making excuses anymore. He was simply saying, I'm a work in progress.